Hello and welcome to Documentation Not Included, episode 2.2, the developer interview process, WTF. I didn't come up with a title, but we're basically going to be questioning what people do in the interview process. Why do we get tested like we get tested as developers, and what we should really be doing, I think, as well. Hopefully we've come to a conclusion and everybody on the planet will take our advice and move on.
We're gonna live in utopia where everything is great and amazing.
So yes, thanks for joining us live on Twitch. For those listening on the podcast, we hope to see you in Twitch chat, joining in with the conversation next Thursday at 7 p.m. GMT. All my words.
Unfortunately, Josie isn't with us today. She has a bad migraines, or maybe she contacted my virus through the internet, which probably would be first case of viral infection through TCP/IP protocol.
I thought of that. That should be IOPS. You know, we couldn't use VoIP last week, so it has to be an I for infection.
Yeah, but if that's the case, then humanity is truly doomed. And yeah, let's spend our last minutes on this earth happily together. But before that, we have Anthony. Hello, Anthony.
Hello.
Yeah, and back with us, we're gonna be talking about development process. So yeah, it's gonna be amazing.
And before we get going, Josie will have our guts for garters if we don't do an icebreaker. So I've come up with one today. Hopefully, we've all got a wallet lying around. Pick something out of your wallet or your pocket and tell us why it's important to you. No credit cards or anything like that. Make sure you don't show anything on the.
Get my wallet.
I actually haven't looked in my wallet, and I was the one who came up with this, so I need to have a little rummage through.
I'm just going to run and get it.
I have like the weirdest things, but it's hard to like rummage through my wallet because of the credit cards.
I immediately thought of one thing, obviously, and
oh shit! I have like something amazing. So I have a Chinese cookie.
Oh, cool! A fortune cookie.
Yeah, fortune cookie thingy.
So why is that important to you, though?
Oh, because it already happened. So an old wish will come true, and I've got it like long time ago, before I was a game developer, and then I became a game developer, which, you know, was something that I was working towards my entire life. So, you know, confirm here first, folks, Chinese fortunes from fortune cookies, 100% success rate.
Good stuff. Let Anthony, if he's got something, if he's picked something, or has he just grabbed his wallet?
I can't find my wallet. I don't know.
This was always going to be a difficult one if we need props.
I just have all my cards loose in my pocket, but I've just taken my cards out of my pocket. And I think possibly my most favourite and most embarrassing thing is my Mecha Bingo card, just in case of the bingo emergency.
I forgot that you did bingo. I forgot that you were into bingo.
Also, is there some sort of like a big UK bingo underground club with like membership clubs?
Anthony's in all kinds of weird clubs, though.
Yeah, it's not really very underground.
No. Well, mine it can be sensible, or it could be on the same kind of ilk as your Mecha Bingo card. So first of all, I'm going to do the stupid one.
What's that?
It's a
Red's True Barbecue.
Red's True Barbecue True Believer Rewards card, because that's one of the best places on the planet to eat, in my opinion.
They shut down the one in London.
Not affiliated, by the way, not on commission. But I am actually going to use a picture of my wife because she's beautiful, and I always keep it in my wallet because. Just cause.
Wait, Anton, did you say that it shut down in the London, the barbecue places?
The Red Street Barbecue shut down in London. There used to be one in Shoreditch, and I think it was just the one, and it shut down. I don't know why.
There's some good ones in London.
It's because they're all vegans.
Yeah. Okay, so let's move on.
Yeah, onto our topic, which is interview process, and it's gonna be very topical because I am right now undergoing multiple interview processes, as it tends to be when you switch companies. So yeah, it's gonna be super exciting topic. So let's dive right into it. Right?
Yes, I mean I'm those who can listen regularly know that I'm a contractor, so I'm interviewing all the time. I don't really agree with the process for what I do because I come in for a project, if you know what I mean, for the way that it is done. But it's unfortunately that I just have to tag on to that. Interviews are more for me getting to know the client. figuring out what they want, figuring out the basic requirements, scope, kind of what the structure is in the company and how I fit into that and how they want me to fit into it. See if it's a fit, really. For me,
interviewing each other in a way.
Yeah, I mean, I do essentially enter an interview like an interview, but it isn't. They don't. A lot of clients don't expect that when you turn up on site, and a lot of the time, I get he's a bit too senior for this role, because sometimes I'm acting like a business to business thing, and it's not. It's a difficult position for me to be in either way, because I can't. It's not like networking and going out to just get work. People try you out with a small bit of work, and then they give you more work, and then more and more if you do well. And then they refer you to other people, and that's how you build a business. But it's not like that at all with the contracting world. It's either there's a job, it exists.
I just don't understand the face, like, he knows too much, or like he's overqualified. I'm like, can you imagine how it goes in their, at the background? Like, he knows too much.
Maybe not in that context, but yeah, I know where you're coming from. It's a difficult one, isn't it? I mean, it's a lot of the time they expect you to go in as a contractor and just kind of be part of the furniture and just fit into the culture and just do the work that they give you. But it's difficult for us to be in that position when we're actually independent consultants. And it's sometimes it's a grey area, and there's a lot of legislation around it as well legally, and it becomes less of an issue if you approach it a different way. But it's very difficult. It's more difficult to get work. You're fighting with other businesses, basically. Anyway, so I mean that's my experience of it. I've obviously went through interview processes as well, with full employment before I became a contractor. Before I was self-employed, and I've done it all. I've done all kinds of tests and all kinds of madness. So first of all, I want to ask Anthony. Why did you want to talk about this topic specifically? Is there an underlying theme, or is it just you've had a recent experience?
So I come at it from a slightly different angle. So for quite a few years now, I have done technical interviews with developers, and everywhere that I've worked, we've had massive and massive arguments. Did it work? People don't want to do them, because you're not wasting a developer's time, but the developer has to make a big time commitment to sort of apply for the job. I've had, ones where they're just code reviews where they send them in, technical tests that they do online, and pair programming ones where you sit down with the programmer and get them to program. And they're all horrendous. I was just wondering everybody hates them. It never ceases to amaze me how many developers, when you look at the CV and you see they've got years and years of experience, fail to be able to, do a for loop or something like that, and just fall to bits. And it's because, it's not because they can't program, but I don't know what it is. So that's sort of my experience really.
I think there's a big difference here with when it comes to people, individuals approach interviews differently. Some of them don't feel worthy before they enter the interview. Some of them feel overconfident, and some of them just feel like it's just something they have to do to get through to the next stage, And the problem here, the problem I see with that particular bit is that I've lost my train of thought.
So in terms of developers not knowing, so while you look for that train, I'm gonna fill in. So in terms of developers not knowing, like failing even to do a for loop on an interview, it could be a mixture of different IDE, different development environment, and stress. I'm not gonna lie, there are some very basic stuff in shaders, in graphical programming, in HLSL, GLSL, that I will forget. Stupid stuff, when you make the correlation at the top for before you start your CG program, when you make declarations, you don't put semicolons at the end there. If you put semicolon there, it's gonna crash. And then everywhere else, you put semicolons. Stupid fucking thing. And then I will every now and then I will forget and I will do the same thing, because at least before you will heavily mod your development setup, it is not set for shader programming. I haven't found an IDE which helps you program shaders. It's almost as if you'll be doing it in a notepad. So it could be part of it could be that different development environment that just stress and brain having a blue screen?
So ID setup is quite interesting. So I had a lot of for a while I did it where developers would come in and sit with me at my desk in the office and use my computer, and I'd say to them, look, you set it, spend 5 minutes, familiar yourself with the ID, get yourself comfortable, feel free to mess around with ReSharper and all that sort of stuff, and to sort of try and ease them into it. And we all forget semicolons and random things every now and again, and but the amount of people who then just get sort of locked into a spiral of and then since then, the ones I do recently I actually do via WebEx, so they share their screen over a WebEx, and then so it's their ID that they've got set up. Mm-hmm. So there's less an excuse there for messing up the ID. I have genuinely had people come up to an interview, and I've said, what language would you like to program in? Because this one can be done in any language. And they've just made up, they've just said, I really wanted to learn this programming language, so I've decided to choose a random ID and this random programming language out of a hat to do it with that I've never used before. And I was like, okay, that's and you'll never guess how those interviews went.
I must admit, amazingly, nothing wrong happened ever.
I think I agree with the ID thing. I've been flustered occasionally when for example, when I've had a job that I've been really hands-on with. I'm coding all the time. I'm in Visual Studio and I'm using ReSharper and I've got everything set up perfectly. And I spend ages doing that. Then I have to move to a box that doesn't have that set up. It takes me a little bit to get my head back. I'm not going to be useless, but there's a lot of things that you take for granted. For example, there's a shortcut in ReSharper where you create a property just by typing prop snippet, and it creates a property for you. Sometimes you could go through writing that over and over and over again 500 times and then kind of just forget how it actually looks, what it's structured like, where the get goes. Does it go before or after the parenthesis? So, or does it go, do I need parenthesis in this particular instance, and all of that kind of stuff can drop out your head if you're using an ID that helps you. But that doesn't mean you're a bad programmer in any way, shape or form.
If you think about programming on a day-to-day basis, how many times do you say create a new program, a new solution from scratch? Yeah. How many times a day do you write a database connection? You don't. There's already a database layer there, and you're adding. You're always further down the stack. So I totally get that. I always try and.
You might spend 3 months writing link queries, and then another 3 months, and then another 3 months working on Angular. You might forget these things, and that's a lot of the time. People want recent experience as well. When was the last time you worked with this technology? Well, when I think about it, it was 2 years ago when I actually think about the numbers, but it doesn't matter. I still know what I'm doing with it. And Google, as we've all said all the time, Google is pretty much our jobs these days. We need to learn how to refine what we search for, but that's about it. And apply that.
I always allow people to use Google as well. I always say,
but people won't in an interview.
No, some people do. Some people refuse to. Some people go, no, I can't do that, I'll fail. And then they end up failing because they didn't Google the syntax to open a file, which is, again, something that nobody ever does.
You don't know the agenda of the person that's interviewing you. You've just met them. I know you're kind of as an interviewer, you get called to it as well. You get called to people's, how the individuals are feeling. And we go back to this feeling of Sonder that we've talked about on this show a few times, that feeling that everybody has their own lives and their own intricate details that are going on. And it's important to remember that as well as an interviewer and try and make them as comfortable as you possibly can.
I do. So one thing that quite often happens is you say, it's all right, take your time. That just makes things worse. But just my agenda when I sit down to interview somebody is just hoping that I'm not going to spend an hour staring at a blank screen with them getting really stressed.
I absolutely do not agree with people watching me in an interview while I code. I have got them walked out of an interview where they've done that to me. I think it's the worst, most unrealistic interview process that you could put together. I just don't get it. Nobody watches you like that when you're working.
If you use pair programming.
If you use pair programming, you're wrong. But yes, and yes, that is a strong opinion. I am not a fan of pair programming. It's not. I don't find it.
We should do an episode on pair programming.
What is pair programming?
I'm more than up for that.
It's when you sit and program with somebody watching you the whole time.
why would you ever do that? Like, I have a from time to time, like when boss would come over to check out on our art department, he would like take a look at what I'm doing, and he's like looking over my shoulder and then typing, and I could see like my focus just like dropping off a cliff. I would have to like stop whatever I was doing. Like, did you want to talk with me?
You have to get into a zone with it. Don't get me wrong. I've done it, and it's not something I failed at. We did fine. You know, I worked with. Luckily, I paired with somebody who I worked with very well, and we both took turns in programming. We both took turns at watching and distracting, whatever you call it. You know, when you making the other people making people go away. You know, that kind of thing. There was an element of enjoyment to it, but it just wasn't for me. I didn't feel like I produced any better quality code. Maybe it's a seniority thing. Maybe it's that I've learned my mistakes without pair programming, and then I was mostly the senior in that position. Maybe it didn't work for me for that. I don't know.
I don't think anybody likes pair programming. I've done it. I don't particularly enjoy it because nobody enjoys having somebody breathing over you the whole time you're programming. When it has been most successful is when the two people are at the same level. Not just as like in seniority, but also in their knowledge of the problem that's being solved. And it is, in my opinion, almost always used as a way to train people up. And when the other person has no knowledge and you're having to explain everything all the time, it becomes really frustrating. Yeah. So that's my opinion on it. I
suppose I do pair programming inadvertently when I'm training people, but they don't sit and it's not the same kind of feedback system that you would expect from a proper. You know, it's me teaching people and showing them, and then saying, "Well, if I do this, then this happens." You know, usually a junior, as I said. Anyway, we're getting a little bit off topic here with the pair programming stuff. So we talked about a few types of tests there. We weren't talking about. We talked about the hands-on practical tests. We talked about the actual interview process, but we haven't talked about the detail of that. So have you got a preferred way of? Are you talking from an interviewer's point of view, actually, Anthony, or an interviewee?
Yeah, that's what I said. So I mean, this whole question came up because somebody at work had done another interview and gone, "Oh my God, why the hell has this person turned up to an interview if they can't even do this, or like not done any research or preparation, or just not read the email from the recruiter that said, open WebEx, have an IDE open and ready to go. I don't have Visual Studio on this computer." You've not even read the email.
Yeah, so you're not. That's the. Yeah, I mean that makes a decision for me immediately in an interview.
Yeah, I mean, but it's really frustrating for me as an interviewer because that is a waste of my time. Yep. I genuinely want people to pass. I never go into an interview wanting somebody to fail, and all I ever do is try and help them to because especially when this is another classic interview moment when. You basically give somebody maybe somebody's stuck on something I'm just going to tell them this little bit so they can get over that and move on to the next section so I can see a bit more about how they think and that sort of stuff, and they go, "Oh no, that's not it," and carry on.
You mean they tell you that you're wrong? And
yeah,
right.
Like, trust me, mate, I have done this. Wow. I have watched people do this hundreds of times.
Yeah, I've literally made the test. I'm pretty sure I know. Oh crap! That's a whole other. So my constant fear is that I'm socially not adjusted. That I'm very bad at contacting with people. But the more I hear, I feel like a fucking superstar. It would never cross my mind when I'm sitting in an interview with a test from their technical. Because right now I'm applying for a weird positions where in one company there isn't a technical to interview me, so they don't even they have to get someone else to confirm that I'm a competent person. So I would instantly join in as the most competent person in the company in my own field. But I would never. So when they give me art test, I could. Maybe discuss. But if a company that has a senior, that has a person that are way better at the stuff that they're hiring me for, that designed the test, and if that person is telling me solution, I ain't gonna discuss with that.
Yeah, there's certain talk, chat back you can do it depending on the interviewer, but as an interviewee, you're the submissive one. Yeah, you don't do that.
Yeah, I would definitely ask about the. oh, like, why is that? Because that would be like a learning moment for me.
Yeah.
But I would never be dismissive towards
and
it.
that also shows willing to learn as well. It's a big thing. It's how you deal with every situation in an interview. Yeah. If I go to an interview and the agent sold it to me wrong, or the client has told me the wrong things, and when I actually get there, the technical people I'm talking to are like, oh, that's nonsense. We're actually writing in this language and we're using this ID, and I'd be like, well, I've never used them before, but please feel free to give them to me. It might take me an hour to pick the basics up around it, but I'm going to be there for an hour, so is it worth it? That's the kind of thing. It depends on how you deal with individual issues in an interview. And so
mistakes happen. Yeah.
What I was trying to get out of you then, so I asked if you were the you're talking from the perspective of an interviewer.
Yes.
So what's your preferred way to interview a candidate for a permanent job then?
Yeah. What's like the ideal interview scenario?
Yeah.
Process.
I have worked many places that have had many different ways, and they all seem to have situations where you feel like that person should have got the job, but you just can't pass them from the interview. It's very difficult, and especially in programming, there's so much CV packing going on. Yeah. But trying to find out whether somebody can really code is really difficult, which is why we end up doing these technical tests, which are quite often lame and arbitrary, but you need to have some sort of yardstick. So, I do think a technical test is of some description is the way to go, but I've never come across one that I've been like, yes, that is the one. We should always do that. So, but I think if I was to have like a list of things, they had to be simple enough that they don't, depend on particular technologies. They're sort of more raw, sort of algorithmic type things, but also the algorithm can't be so complicated that the person can't pick it up straight away as well.
I think analytical skills should be tested more.
Definitely.
As a programmer, no matter what kind of programmer you are, really, analytical skills are really important. Being able to, disseminate information. Disseminate information that you're given, and then make something of it, or produce or ask the right questions. Make sure that you're going down the right route. That's a really important skill that doesn't get tested enough, because a lot of people focus on the doing rather than the actual planning, or the planning stage.
The asking the right questions is a massive thing for me, and that's one of the reasons why sitting down and doing a technical test, you don't give them the whole problem to start off with. You give them some ideas and then expect them to flesh out if they just go straight off in one direction, then...
Let me give you an example of an interview question that I posed for a particular role I was hiring for. As a contractor a while ago, I was asked to help develop an internal team for somebody. And I was looking for a guy who could code like APIs, back-end stuff, knew their end to your programming, knew the object orientation, the basics of object orientation and solid. Excuse me. So one question I asked him, asked everybody, and it really separated the wheat from the chaff. It separated the panickers and the overthinkers and the people who were just right for the job. And it was, what is an interface and what is it useful for? Now, what would you answer with that, Anthony?
You're interviewing me now.
I am interviewing you. Go on.
What would I answer for that? An interface is just a definition of a set of operations that something might do, so Excellent. You can then implement it different ways.
So, is that your full answer?
That'll do for now.
Okay, so great. I just put Anthony on the spot there as an interview. I know he didn't think he was going to get interviewed, but he did. So the question you gave me the right answer. Good enough, definitely. I know how what you've given me there tells me exactly. At least you haven't given me the textbook definition, but you know what it's for and why it exists. The best candidates, I thought, that answered that question were, which type of interface? Are you talking about the programming interface, as in the contract, as you just described, or are you talking about a user interface? And so many people started answering it as a user interface before anything else, and almost all of the juniors answered it as a user interface.
Yep.
And this is I didn't look it up anyway. I came up with this question because I was being I wrote 20 odd questions on it. I think they're all really hard as well. They're all ridiculous things I'd just learned yesterday. I was a bastard back put it that way. Yeah. And but that one question, I'm going to use it forever and a day because it's. I thought it give me the analytical ones. It tells me if they ask me, well, which type, because that's important information I need to know before I answer the question. And then if they can explain both types, brilliant, excellent.
That's a sneaky type of question. It's funny because
but it's a great question. It's a great conversation starter without being so deep or so technical that So I agree, it's a good question.
I mean, the icebreaker, it wasn't a very good icebreaker today. I'm sorry about that, everybody.
So
but the icebreaker we did today, that kind of thing that sets people at ease as well is a good way to enter an interview. I didn't say that was an entry question. That was just a question that happened to be answered in a particular way and surprised me. I didn't expect the answers I got. And I'm looking back at it, it's like, wow, that actually helps me.
So like dialing back to the general idea of technical tests and stepping up, because I have like one more thing about the tests that I wanted to ask. So Anthony, you said that most, like all of the tests are like bullshit and stuff like that. And we also talked a bit about it before the show. And before I will say how it is from the gameplay perspective. Like, is there really not a simple one like a 4-hour task that would test everything that you would want about a candidate, programming wise, in software development?
4-hour test.
He's an artist, though. He's an artist, though, and that isn't. So, it's a very different world. That's madness.
So just to give you a sense of scale, I think.
Yeah, so like the tests that I'm familiar with, from the game dev perspective are either art test or technical artist test. And all of them were usually so far around 4 hours to do, and they're not on site. You do them at your home and then you submit online the effects. Right. Yeah, it's not on site. Yeah, I mean 4 hours of the in-house development. Yeah, that would be too long.
The problem with that is, and we've had this issue before where people just Google it, people post solutions online, and then they just copy it, or or I've actually had it where they've got somebody else to do it. Which then, as soon as you get to the next interview, it's just obvious that you've not done this.
But there's also an argument there with 4 hours. I'm a candidate going for a job. I've applied for, maybe I'm not that good. Maybe I've applied for 20 jobs. Maybe I get rejected by 19 of them, and there's only one that I'm going to get. If all of them had a 4-hour interview process, I'd be like, no, I want to kill myself by the end of it.
And that's a big issue, especially in London where the market is so competitive. Mm-hmm. The person, they will have somebody offering them a job within a week. So the whole thing needs to be done, within a week. And it needs to be as time sort of.
So I guess time will also be the issue. So like the cool thing from the game dev perspective is that at least like so far I had like one technical art test for the technical artist position, and it struck me as like really freaking smart thing. Like it was basically a water shader which tests like writing a water shader tests multiple techniques that you need to use for multiple different effects as a technical artist, as someone who writes shaders. So it tests that you at least know all of them, or at least that you know how to go about finding them, and then like also the artistics of it, the look, obviously how looks the thing. So it's like very holistic thing when you can see like literally everything from binary asset optimization in the package to the coding style and whether the code is messy or not, and obviously like the capability, and then also the artistic. So you test like literally in 4 hours. You test that usually. I mean, probably it could be done in an hour when you do that stuff frequently. It could take any days if you're really slow at it, but I would say something like around 4 hours.
One of the most complicated jobs I've ever done. I had a very, very simple test for it, and it was a brilliant piece of work. It was an excellent project, but the guy who was interviewing he was a no nonsense guy. He just couldn't be bothered really, I think, with the interview process. He gave us the FizzBuzz test, which is similar kind of a FizzBuzz test. Look it up online. It's basically, it is on every something like
every third word you print fizz, and every 5 words you print buzz, and then every 3, if it's a combination of 3 and 5, you say fizz buzz. Is something like that? Is that?
It's something like that, but there's some modulation involved. But I've just spoiled it for people who haven't done it before. But it's modulus rather. It's a dead simple test, but it shows you quite a lot about the person who writes it. It shows them how concise and tight they can make the code. It shows people if they know the basic mathematical operations, and it's just a very basic test, but it only took 15 minutes to do.
So can I just
even?
So that is exactly the sort of algorithm that we would test where I work at the moment. Something like FizzBuzz, but FizzBuzz is too common. But exactly that level. Now that seems to me, and when I did the interview there, I was done in 20 minutes, 25 minutes. Boom, off you go. I was like, oh, is that it? Because it was meant to be an hour. Maybe I failed and they didn't ask me the other question. But the amount of people who cannot do that is astounding.
Exactly, and if they can't do that, a simple... I mean, I even did it in a language I didn't do before. They gave me the IDE and the compiler and everything, and it told me how I basically ran it. But I just wrote it. It was a dead simple thing, for loop, that's it. But it proved it, and that ended up... I said it ended up being one of my favourite projects I've done in my life. It was really interesting and really deep, really complicated. And... that was it. That, and he chatted to me, and he see if I fit in, see if he liked me,
Yeah.
So we have a bit of a sort of philosophy that it doesn't really matter what technologies what back-end technology, what web API stuff that whether SOAP or anything like that. If you can do FizzBuzz, then we can teach you.
Yeah.
That it works quite well. But we have just to go back. I think go back to your previous point, Patrick. I think our success rate for passing a technical interview is in the single digits %.
Ooh.
So, and that's a developer spending an hour with every single candidate, and you're talking 5 out of 100 passing. Even still at that level, it's such a huge investment of time.
It must be because you're in London, that though, because I mean, even up here, we don't get that many candidates. I had to go through a lot for jobs, but not that much. Madness. Oh, go on.
Yeah. Jesus, that's a major sink in terms of resources.
It is a huge time sink, which is why I'm genuinely glad. I'm genuinely glad when somebody passes. I want people to pass, because the last thing I want to do is have to sit here for an hour and do this again.
Yeah,
I think at a certain level as well of programming, or if for contracting at least anyway, when I've been for some interviews, I've went in, done a technical test, I've been like kind of reluctantly doing it, but do it because I have to, I do the test, and sometimes I look out and sometimes they give me everything that's almost the same as my home setup. They give me ReSharp, a Visual Studio, it's C# that I have to do it in, it's using a technology, most up-to-date framework that I tend to work with, all of that kind of stuff. And it fits in, and I get it done dead quick, or I don't finish it, but they can see that I'm more than capable of doing it, Those kind of interviews, they tend to jump on you. If you do really well at them, they'll jump on you, because there probably are quite a few candidates who can't deliver the quality maybe they're looking for sometimes. And it does happen, you do get a lot of people who fail, but I'm still taken aback by that number.
Yes. And it's not. This has been across all the jobs where I've interviewed in the past. It's certainly when I was back in Blackpool, we were interviewing there as well, of similar sort of.
So do you think a coding test is absolutely definitely needed then, before we move on to another topic?
I haven't seen anything better as an indicator of whether someone can program.
So we're talking about developers specifically here as well.
What about having like established portfolio, like a GitHub repository?
Yes, project? So if somebody has a GitHub portfolio, or you can see the work that I do at the moment is open source, so you could go and have a look at my commits and go, oh, that's terrible.
have done.
I wouldn't play him.
Don't understand anything you're doing. To be fair.
Me neither, but don't tell anyone. It's not recorded, is it? But and that is a great way, having a GitHub repository. But a lot of people don't, and a lot of people have a GitHub account with like 3 abandoned projects that they started 6 years ago, and it's not really enough to see. I mean, I'm quite lucky. I'm being paid somewhere to work on open source software, so you can see how I work day to day by just looking at the pull requests, and how I interact with people. So that's actually a brilliant way to see how somebody programs. But without that, it's really difficult, I think.
So
if someone is only working and they don't have hobby projects, especially as a programmer, it's basically impossible to have a portfolio, I guess, because everything is property of the company. You cannot publish your code.
Yeah.
One of the things that I tended to focus on when I was interviewing people, before we move on to another topic, was what they did outside of work. I'm not saying that all developers to be a good developer, have to have technical interests outside of work. But being into things like open source, being able to demonstrate that you read blogs and you subscribe to RSS feeds and you are interested in the industry and the new advancements and the new frameworks that are coming out, I think that's quite important. But I know it's not necessary for a good programmer.
It's a difficult one, because I don't genuinely do a lot of programming outside of work. Because
you're not a good programmer.
Well, that is true. But I find it really difficult. I find after a day of work, I find my sort of I've mental capacity as well as physical capacity, and I've used so much of it. I need to do something completely different to sort of reset. And I find if I do stuff after work, I tend to sort of burn out a little bit. Yeah. But it is a great indicator, for some people. But I've also known programmers who've been terrible, who've watched every blog on the internet and read everything, and watched every video about programming. So
there's a few people that we worked with that I can think of in that category.
So there's just one other bit of the interview process I'd like to bring up, if that's all right.
Yep.
And I don't know whether you two have had to do these before, but this is a code review, where you're given somebody's code.
Okay.
It's generally meant, a terrible, terrible piece of code, and you're asked to, review it and ask, And I've done this several places that I've worked.
Ooh,
have you ever done that before?
I've never done that. No.
That's really
interesting. I could see it as a
yeah, I could see it as being something good.
Probably better than technical test, actually.
Yeah, it probably could be, because you cannot Google that.
Yeah, I mean, it's really quite it's really quite telling. So you'll get ones back where they've written one comment on it, because they obviously just don't give a shit and have just spent zero time on it. You'll get ones back where they've pointed out every sort of syntax error that's in there and said, oh, this bracket needs to be on this, and this is an interface, so it has to have an I in front of it. Well, I'm not entirely sure that's. Well, I'm not entirely sure that's what
It's a pattern and practice, but it's a practice, but it's not.
Yeah, if they say
it's a coding style. So.
But if they say the common Microsoft coding style for C# is to have an I in front of an interface, but I'm not sure what your house coding standard is. That's a reasonable thing to put on it. I'm totally happy with that. Mm-hmm. And really heavy on the syntax, and this constructor's missing this variable's not got a getter and a setter. However, they totally miss the fact that they've read a method that says something and does something else. Yeah. They've not actually looked at the meaning of the code, which for me is the first thing that I do. Do you know what I mean?
Maybe a refactor test. Maybe you give them code that's already written and you ask them to change it to be more efficient.
So one of the interview processes at a previous place was to send the code test out first and then ask them to refactor it, and then they came in for 2 hours and extended it, which is quite an onerous process, but it worked really well. Apart from when you start a 2-hour interview and realise 10 minutes in that it's going to end horribly, but I have to still sit there for another hour and 50 minutes.
Yeah, I've been on both ends of the barrel, and sometimes I'm doing a test or I'm doing an interview, and I feel like this isn't. I don't even want this job, or they don't like me, or it's not right. There's something wrong here.
I certainly have as well. I mean, I've been in an interview, they've asked me a question, I've just gone, you know what, I don't know.
I'm not sure I've been that blunt. I've been as professional as I can be, but sometimes you just get a feel for the place, and it's just not. It doesn't work. It's not something there. So I mean. Okay, so there are other types of tests that we can do in the interview process as well. Not just developer tests, not just coding tests. We've got, the question format, the question and answer format, which tends to be most of the time, if I've not got a technical test, the way that I'd go. They've got the star format, where we've got people who tell us a story, tell us what they've done, why they did it, what the objective was, what they achieved by the end of it. That is kind of where I go with most of my answers, regardless of what kind of interview I have. And you've got the casual interviews, haven't you, where people are just basically winging it for the entire thing. And to be fair, some of them tend to go pretty well, especially if the person that it's interviewing is very experienced and can just ask questions off the cuff, and have a good flowing conversation with you. Mm-hmm. What's in terms of the question part of things? What do you do, or what have you done in the past?
So where I currently am, we have like a design question where we ask about stuff, and it's basically just completely open-ended, but again, it's trying to get people to ask us questions rather than the other way around. The previous place I worked, we used to do ask about your last project or the last interesting sort of project they did, and then explain the architecture on a board to what somebody technical and maybe one of the BAs or a project manager or something like that. And that's a really, really great one, because it really shows the ability to sort of explain technical concepts at a non-technical level, which but then also get the technical feedback as well.
Yeah. So I mean, is that again? I'm presuming that's your preferred kind of way, just asking people what their experiences are, because there is the question answer format where they don't really go into experiences, because that has happened to me. They've just come in and asked me a load of stock questions, tick boxes literally, and handed that over to technical people to go, well, this guy got 8, this guy got 9, let's give it the one with 9,
So that's quite often used as a low pass filter. So the questions are given to HR, and it's something they can do to weed out candidates before it even gets to us.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I have had some of those before, and when you're being asked those questions by people who aren't technical at all, you can sometimes give an answer that it's just not on their list. It's not on my list. The computer says no, when it is a completely valid answer, and is a really frustrating thing. But I understand, from being on the other end and knowing how valuable my time is.
Yeah,
it's not something that I've ever delivered. I've never done that. I've had questions and answers, but they've all been geared very much towards exactly what we're doing, and I'm technical, so I'm asking them in a more dynamic way, I suppose. Okay, so there's something that Josie's been talking about for a few weeks as well, and it's when you are being interviewed by a client, and this has happened to me a couple of times in the last few years. They've interviewed you, or in my instance, sometimes they need some kind of design specification or a quotation of some description. They will take that and benefit from it in some way, shape or form. Now, without taking you on, without hiring you. And what Josie's referred to as brain rape, which is the asking questions or asking how would you solve this particular problem, and then they go off and implement it because you're more in, I don't know, you've had the experience before, but not actually taking you on to hire. What your experience? Have you had any experiences of that?
No,
not at all. Well, you don't know actually, don't you? That's the problem.
Well, true. Yeah, I mean, I have had plenty of interviews where they wanted me to sort of go away and do some work on my own, but I can't recall anything where the task wasn't completely unrelated to the sort of company that I was working for. But that's as a sort of a small company to bigger company thing. It's like that. Is it? What's that? 27/B guy on the internet that does all those funny things, and somebody asked him to do something for free because it'll only take 5 minutes.
Oh, the Australian guy.
Yeah.
I can't remember his name, but the guy who did the spider drawing.
The spider, it's like that, isn't it? You put out some quotes, get people to design the stuff for you, then you take the design and use that. I mean, that's awful. That's awful.
And that happens in the art industry quite a lot as well.
I think that's the most common in the art industry, and then it probably bleeds out into the game dev simply because of the art industry specifications. Because as I said, it's unfortunately a double-edged sword of having the initial screening for the game dev interview process seems to be done by portfolios, and seems like everyone, it's viewed very favorably to have a portfolio, to the point where even as a programmer, you probably should have a portfolio. It was quite shocking to me to learn that as a technical artist, I don't necessarily need to have a portfolio, and I was like, wait, but I should probably. So there isn't really as much of an issue of people coming in and not knowing how to do the fucking job, because you can do the initial screening and you don't have to invest resources in that. That's done first, and then the advantage is you can have more in-depth test, but the disadvantage is that then the company can take it and run with it. And it's definitely a problem of smaller companies, simply because they feel like they can get away with more. Or they don't have a legal department breathing down their neck and saying, "Oh my God, please don't do this." But then also, like in the worst case scenario, even if you sue them, like you might don't even get any money from them. So it seems to be a liability for bigger companies, and for smaller companies seems to be a thing to do. Which
yeah,
is
we don't really have that problem.
I do have a brain rape corollary. I have learnt a huge amount from doing the interviews. So about programming techniques, certainly using the ID. We were discussing before the show about Control and W, which is my favourite ReSharper shortcut. Everybody should have a favourite ReSharper shortcut. That's something that everybody should have. But I learned that from watching somebody do it in an interview. So people used to come and sit at my computer, set up ReSharper, and in their own way. All these people have these like one command that they really, really enjoyed.
Yep.
And I was like, oh, that's mind blown. I've got
a load that I use, but Alt Enter is my favourite.
Alt and Enter. I love Alt Enter. Do you know about disabling camel humps? Or enabling camel humps.
What are camel
humps?
humps?
Go to the next. So
you got a real name?
You can go to when you press Control left and right.
Yeah.
You can go to the next capital letter in the word rather than to the next word or the last word, which is actually quite useful.
Oh, for variables.
Case,
yeah.
Control and what? Control and what?
Control and left and right, just like you'd move between words. But if you put camel humps on,
What's
your
word camel humps?
Right, is it an option that in ReSharper?
It's an option in ReSharper. Yeah. But for camel casing.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you can move between, because every enterprise project ends up with variables like thing, something, whatever, object, factory, orchestrator.
Interface.
So you use that to go between them. But I've learned so much from watching other people program, and it's definitely made me a better programmer.
Yeah, and I agree with that on other respects as well. I said pair programming is maybe a better programmer in some instances. All of the working with other people closely makes you a better programmer. I learned some of the best things back when I first started contracting from a very small portion of the people I worked for, but they were really inspiring as well, and taught you all kinds of little things, and I don't know. There's something about working with people that's or working closely with people, or at least observing people coding. That's it's reserved for a very small number of people. Even developers, a lot of people can't do that. Can't enjoy watching them. But I do.
Well, it's like you get the energy from them. You see people being productive, and you get the want to be productive simply to fit in.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I suppose. Yeah.
I mean that's what I'm assuming. That's like my sort of like the psychology explanation for it, because I definitely can feel the nice feels when I that's why I like working in offices where I like semi-open plan, when everyone is on headphones and like no one talks to each other, but we're like shoulder to shoulder, or whilst I can take a peek at like other guy's screen, and then we can start talking about it. It's amazing thing. And also watching live streams when someone is live streaming coding, which a lot of people do, or game development, or what have you.
I have to be in the right mood to do that.
But a lot of people tune in and watch. So I was always wondering, like, why the fuck would people watch me work? Because I almost cannot stand myself working, because it's work. Like, it's a work for a reason. And people would watch me work. I'm like, whoa, what the fuck are you doing here, motherfuckers? And they're like, well, we're also working, but it's fun to have like you chatting in the background and like take a peek every now and then at what you're doing. So yeah, it's amazing thing that we have.
Yeah, we got a little bit waylaid then with the brain rape stuff. So you're saying you haven't experienced any of that directly, Anthony? You haven't?
No.
And I mean, I have experienced it where a client's taken a brief or some kind of I've forgotten the name of the thing that I wrote. It's not a design spec, because that's way too detailed for an interview process, but it's been statement of work. That was it, statement of work that they've taken away, and then actually what I designed appeared on the internet very shortly, well, not shortly, months after I'd done it. And it's like, well, there is an argument that it's a system, and if anybody's got the same kind of training as me, they're going to come up with a similar kind of system, But at the same time,
but it is. I mean, you've done work for them, and they've not paid for it.
And sometimes I feel like I do work, or I go to an interview, and they do use things that I say, because they ask specific questions, but I've become smart to it as well, and I usually give them enough information that they know I can do it, but I don't tell them how to do it, or it really does depend on who you're speaking to, though. Yeah. So do you believe in having multiple different types of people in the room for interviewing, or just technical people for interviewing developers? Have you got?
You should definitely have some non-technical people interview the developer
as well at the same time, or
it depends which bit of the test. I think you should have a design stage and a technical stage. There's no point having a BA there watching you if you're doing a pure coding test. But certainly in the design stage, you should have the right people at the right stages. They should be able to talk to the business as well as being able to work technically as well. But I think they are two quite distinct skills that you need both of.
See, I've never prioritized that side of an interview process. I've never said people, and to be fair, I do get interviewed by people, or at least have meetings with people who are non-technical. But it's a very different sell for me. It's a sales pitch rather than kind of. I mean, as much as I'm not a salesperson, but as much as I sell myself, it's pimping my skills and giving them confidence that I can do what they need to do. They need me to do. But it's not really an interview at that stage.
I just came up with something that could be potentially a really good technical skill and communication skill test. So I'm gonna run it past you guys. Let me know if it's a good idea. So imagine a test. You get a candidate, and you get someone from your company who's not technical at all, like someone from sales or your secretary or cleaner. And basically the task is you have to explain a bug that happened to you at your previous work or at anything that you can talk in terms that this non-technical person can understand. So you have to explain the situation around the bug and the bug itself and the delays that it caused to a person who's not technical. I think it will be phenomenal.
Questions like that are great. Questions like that are absolutely exactly the sort of questions that you should be asking in interviews, because they're exactly the sort of skills that developers need to have every day.
It should be as non-abstract as possible. I think in an interview, you should have organic questions or real life scenarios, real life things, not abstractions that are madness. If it's not going to really happen, it's not really a test of their ability to think. They can think in abstract, but they can't think in the real world.
Yeah, I just cannot fathom. I always have problems with abstract, very, very abstract things that I don't see any immediate application for. If I cannot rotate it in my mind in such a way that I can find application in real life for something, then my brain just refuses to accept to load the problem. This is not gonna happen. We won't gonna contribute neurons to this. You can stop trying now. GTFO. And a lot of people are like that. So yeah.
I think again, it's a people process, isn't it? And that's an important thing to remember, is that it's not just about ticking boxes and numbers. It's about the people that you're either being interviewed by or interviewing. And to me, sometimes a fit is more important, and an attitude is more important than technical skills, because a lot of the time you can teach the technical skills if they've got the right attitude and aptitude for them as well. And I think there should be probably more onus put on that side of things, the soft skills and the ability to learn and expand and be analytical.
I genuinely think there is a problem of being too smart as a programmer.
What do you mean? The actual programmer or the interviewers being too smart?
No, programmers being too smart. I think it can sometimes be to your detriment to be too clever, because you write code so complicated that nobody can understand it. Because you've used. Do we really? Well, that's because we're just too smart.
No, but it's our job to write code. We've done it for 20 years or however long we've done it.
It's our job to write code that is, understandable and maintainable by other developers at some point in the future.
Yeah,
that's also part of specification, and a lot of people are forgetting that. And I will totally agree with you, Anthony, on that point. That, yes, sure, especially, I don't know, Spike, if you've seen, recently the lead engine developer of Unity made, a huge rant about C++ on Twitter, which is amazing. I think I'm gonna find it and send it to you.
Yeah.
Because the guy was essentially talking, templating and stuff like that, and he was talking and then compile times, and his essentially point was, I've been doing C++ for 20 years, and he gave example of some common problem written really smartly with C++, that he said, that basically looks like Chinese to me. I've been doing C++ for 20 years, I cannot understand a thing from the screenshot. What the fuck is this? And he showed multiple other issues like that, which arise from using programming tricks which are like nice and fancy and maybe more concise and maybe understandable to you.
There was
the cognitive complexity of that line of code so far that it's just incomprehensible by anybody apart from the person who wrote it without sitting and thinking about it for an hour.
Yeah. I've just experienced. I was looking at the Linux kernel, no less, recently, just because I'm not because I understand it by any stretch of the imagination, or I'm contributing. I was just interested what it looked like, and it was because of security vulnerability in Angular that had been highlighted, and even GitHub picked it up, and I've fixed it now in the new website, etc. But I was looking at it. I was reading on GitHub's comment section, or GitHub's issues boards rather, about this particular fix, and they were talking about the exploit in that there was one person who was responsible for that one piece of code, and they left the project a while ago or something to this effect, and they essentially, someone had injected some malicious random number generator into a cryptographic function of some description, and but no one had noticed it because nobody understands what that code is doing. But somehow it hadn't. It was in a secondary repository. Apparently they've got the main GitHub repository, or they've got wherever the main one is. I don't know exactly. And then they've got the secondary repository, and the secondary repository was the one that was updated. But I don't know if the sync between. I didn't really get into that much depth. But it was interesting in that there was that one person who could touch that, and it's really worrying that a tiny change. I mean, it was literally 2 characters that had changed that could make such a massive impact on the
I know just enough about cryptography to know that I know not enough about cryptography to write any cryptographic code.
I use cryptographic frameworks or tool sets
that other people have written.
Yes, I do not implement my own.
It's funny thing because like I had once task to make a cryptographic app, and I've learned enough during that period to know that I absolutely shouldn't be writing cryptographic apps.
Exactly.
Yes.
It's phenomenal thing. I would recommend literally everyone to try to do it at least once. Like, write this really simple thing that like encrypts a text with PGP or something. It's gonna be a blast. Like generating your own keys, and like then maybe like communicating with like online repositories to exchange. Phenomenal thing. So much fun. Oh my
then
fucking god!
Never use it.
Yeah. Oh my fucking god! Never use whatever you wrote there for anything.
We've all got code we've written that we. It's disgusting. It's some of my older stuff that I don't even look at some of my classic ASP stuff from back before I started really programming. When I was just hacking things together. Yeah. Right. Anyway, so let's move on to RTFM then. So our RTFM section is our catharsis section, where we talk about something that irks us, annoys us, and I'm pretty sure all of us have got something to talk about this week. Or I know I have, for once at least, something in my mind. So to start off with, our guest, Anthony, have you got anything you'd like to shout about?
Have a rant about. So my personal interviewer hatred is when you ask somebody at the end of the. I always have like a bit of time to ask them about, get them to ask some questions and see whether they seem like a normal human being, and I ask them if you got any questions about the company, and they say something like, "What company is it? What program language do you use?" And you could just Google it. You could have spent 2 minutes before the interview Googling all of that information. And if you've not spent the time to even Google the name of the company, then I'm afraid...
If I'm going on site anywhere for an interview or a meeting or whatever I want to call it, I know as much as I can publicly about that company.
Absolutely.
And I will ask the agent if there's an agent involved for a proper job spec, and make sure that I read through it all, and if there's some technologies on there that I don't know about, I'll at least get a brief overview of what those are, how they fit into the overall pattern, if I don't know them, and then at least I've got some ammo to go in there with,
What job is this?
Do you want a job?
I've actually had that question. What job is this?
I ask the agents that because I get so many agent phone calls, and they don't send me confirmation emails most of the time to say I put you forward for this job. It's really that's my RTFM today. That'll do.
Yeah.
I have a one tip to people who actually suffer from it, because I get it. Like when you apply to like so many companies, it's hard. It's hard to keep track of it. Make yourself a fucking spreadsheet. Google Doc or Excel or whatever, when you have your contact, who are you contacting with, the name of the company, the current status of the process, like are they waiting for you, are you waiting for them, what's going on, any notes you have. I'm just looking at mine right now. Probably also, as if you're planning to move, a city and a country in which it is probably a good idea. And then stuff like salary, whatever you think. But the most important is the name of the company, who is interviewing you for it, so you are personal with that person.
It's madness. I don't get the name of the company. I don't know the name of the company most of the time for most of the jobs until the second that I book the interview. Up until then, I have no idea.
That's bad.
Yeah. I mean, that's fine from the recruiter point of view because I know, and I would never there are recruiters on my top 3 list of most hated professions. But
there are good and bad recruiters. There really are.
There are, and I have met good recruiters. I'm Twitter friends with a very good recruiter. I don't know what the verb is for being mutual Twitter followers. But tweeps, is that it?
I think so.
I tweet with a very good recruiter, but the majority of them I would stick in a skip and set on fire.
I think for me it's a give and take relationship a lot of the time. I have to give them a little bit, but they know. They push all the time for too much information. For example, what was the name of the guy that... It doesn't say this as blatantly, but what is the name of the guy that you worked for in the last job? All the time, trying to get that. Yeah. Can you just send me your CV with your latest job on it, or your latest roles on it? They don't want it for that. They want it for companies that have just got rid of a contractor or somebody that might need another one, because they don't know why I'm not there anymore. It's because I've finished my project, guys. Stop speaking to my previous clients because it annoys them. But it's sales, isn't it? It's marketing. It's what they do, and it's their process, and it's a necessary evil. I have got a decent relationship with them now, and I know the charlatans when they ring me up, just based on how they speak to me. I know the good ones from the bad ones almost immediately, and I give the good ones a bit more information than I probably would other times. Mm-hmm. Have we all RTFM'd?
Did you, Chris? Your RTFM?
Yeah, well, mine wasn't actually related to the interview process, but I'm going to use the agency not giving you the right information. It's so annoying as someone who's applying for a job. As Patrick just said, having so many jobs, usually you apply for a fair few anyway, especially if the market's busy at that particular time of year. You've got so many jobs, not having a confirmation email or not having the knowledge of at least who I'm applying for, or at least where in the country it is. Sometimes you don't even get the location. You get a general kind of, it's in London. It's like, well, I could make a significant difference if it's on the suburbs or in the centre.
You can fit like half of my island in London.
I've got a relationship with some recruiters where they actually give me all the information straight away up front because they know that I'm not going to go behind the back for them. But there are a lot of contractors that would absolutely 100% would. They hit, as Anthony said, a lot of people have a bad name for agents.
Jesus, there is a lot of people fucking each other. And I don't know. Yeah. I think I have to be the luckiest human in existence because I almost never experienced it. Like my current recruiter I'm working with, phenomenal guy. Without him, because right now I got super sick and I have to get out of the country. This month is a mess, and without him helping me through the process, it will be so much worse because he's the guy who keeps reminding me, hey, did you message those guys? Hey, how's the artist going? Hey, how's it going? Because it's obviously in his best interest for me to get hired through him.
Yeah.
But he's just a decent fucking guy. And I would never imagine try to go behind his back because I think he's the guy deserves fucking commission from the companies that guy hired me because he helps a lot. And if they're fucking not gonna give it, I'm gonna fucking give him some tip because the guy does a phenomenal job. So I don't understand this.
I also find that if you did go behind an agent's back in any way, shape, or form, they'll find out at some point, and they'll probably blacklist you of some description. I'm speaking as a contractor, and if you go direct with a client, and even if it's outside of the terms of the contract, there's usually some kind of restriction clause in there saying you can't go direct with this client for 6 months or 12 months after the engagement. That's to protect their interests. You have to go through the agency again. It's a common thing in contracting. And the thing is a lot of companies need you to go through an agency for financial reasons because of their process. A lot of places want you to go through an agency because of that extra protection barrier that it gives them. It also gives you, as a contractor, a protection barrier as well, because I agree with an agency, for example, to pay me every 7 days. Most big agencies pay me every 7 days. But if I went direct to a client, they would pay me on a 30-day invoice, 30 days in arrears. So I'd have to wait 60 days for my invoice to be paid. So it's a big difference. And although sometimes you get screwed over and sometimes you're on a just random, this isn't anywhere near our day rates, but say we're on £100 a day. Say we... an agent's on a 12% commission or something, they'll get £12 off that. But sometimes they have markups that are ridiculously high, or they try and get one over on a contractor by saying that, this is actually a £100 a day contract when it's actually a £600 a day contract, and they take a significant portion. Doesn't happen so much these days, but that margin, you don't know about it. You can't legally ask about it. There's nothing there. So, you have to...
What? Is that fucking illegal?
No.
What?
No, because the contract that they have is with the client, and the client, basically, they pay the commission. So if they
you can't ask. You can be like, hey,
I can ask, and I do sometimes, because I ask agents, and I'm professional and upfront about it. They sometimes tell me, and so you don't know if they're telling you the truth,
Yeah, obviously.
But sometimes they say we don't reveal that information. Most of the time, they say that, to be fair. But it does happen. You get 600% markups. It happens. I've had people say to me, "Oh my god, I can't believe they're getting ripped off by this." Anyway.
All right, that's shitty. Yes, so there is definitely a big difference between like recruiters for like agency for contractors and recruiters who are helping companies find employees.
Yeah,
I would say so, because my contact with those employee recruiters is nothing like you described.
Permanent and contract is very different, yes. Anyway, ranted on enough. We're not late. We're not too late today, anyway. But
I'm gonna leave my RTF one for next time. I was going to.
I thought you did one. Sorry.
No, I mean, if I can I?
No, go for it. Go for it.
Fucking email! Like, holy shit! It's 2019. Internet has been around since what, 60s? How the fuck do we not have like a standardized protocol system for sending large files through email? Like, how the fuck is that not automated so that when you attach anything that's like higher than megabyte, like bundle it up to some FTP and attach a link? How is that not a thing? Why is it constantly fucking breaking? I spent like 2 hours trying to send I tried to send my art test, It was like 5 megabytes after I optimized it. Before it was like 12. And it returns every single time. It's like, you cannot have attachments longer than 10 megabytes. Like, it's fucking 5! Learn to count!
Maybe it unzips it and then puts it, or uncompresses it.
I have no fucking clue.
Email filters do that.
I'm a fan of email for organisational reasons, but I do understand that frustration. Now, the way you can get around that, actually, you can't get around that because you can't control the recipient's mail servers, but you can change settings on mail servers, and mine has, I think, an unlimited attachment.
But it's great to broadcast the internet, by the way.
I mean,
but
it's also
to be fair, like,
it's amazing that email is.
Yeah, attachments over emails are also like just bad idea. It should honestly automatically, every single client should like put it on some sort of cloud service and like link it out to the person, and then that person, like, I know it's hard, but it should be doable.
Do you know I found out recently, and I've previously only ever set up things like Exchange servers, so the kind of out of the box solutions. Email systems are actually comprised of a hell of a lot of protocols, more than SMTP and POP3 and IMAP, which are the ones that we know of, really. There's tons of things going on under the scenes, and there's tons of individual components that do all kinds of checking, especially if you've got all of the extensions like the DKIM and PF. There's another protection thing. But if you've got everything enabled, plus PGP and all the other stuff that you'd want if you wanted to properly secure your email system, then it's really, really complicated. Just look up Mail in a Box by it's a Linux like mail server. It tells you, kind of breaks it down. It's out of the box solution, but it breaks it down and tells you exactly what's in everything. Plus, I've been setting up Docker containers with SMTP servers, which have a lot more detail involved because, again, it's a Linux setup. So, yeah, interesting. But
yeah.
Okay, so that brings us to the end of the show. Thank you to everybody who has been listening. There have been people in the chat, but I don't think there's been much, apart from my wife, who said, "Hello, Anthony, you've got a new camera."
Yeah, I just had enough broadband this time.
Yeah, I'd been enough broadband.
Last
yes.
time, it was just a picture of me.
You'd paid your bills this week.
Paper bill.
Yes. So yeah, thanks to everybody who has been watching, and thanks to everyone listening in the future on the podcast.
Yeah, and don't forget to visit our website, dnistream.live, where you can find link to our Discord, GitHub, YouTube channel, everything. And we put our website's code on GitHub, so you can contribute or you can review it, see how horrible of a web developer Chris is and why you should never hire him. Or maybe the opposite, which is more likely.
So speaking of the website and how horrible I am at doing things on it, today marks the 1.0.0 release of our website. Finally, it's been up for a while, but we haven't had all of the features that I wanted to implement for the first version. And I've just basically got the show notes on there. Sorry, no, the show listing, like the archive. But interestingly, if anybody is interested, we have got a GitHub channel, github.com/documentation not included. Bit of a mouthful, but if you type it in, it works. And our website's on there, and it's essentially I've put an aggregate system together that aggregates the information from our Fireside podcast hosting solution and YouTube, and kind of merges them together and puts them in a nice list on our website. And I'm going to expand that over the next few months or whatever.
Chris, I think the most important question is documentation included for the setup?
Well, you see, no, unfortunately not. I did
self-documenting. I assume
it's coming. Believe me, I've got quite a lot of tasks and issues on the. They're all public. If anyone again wants to have a look at the GitHub, they're all public.
I think that will break the spirit of the podcast. After all, documentation's not included, right?
You see, that's the problem, isn't it? But yeah, so yeah, if anyone wants to have a look at the source code for and how I've set that up, there's a few services involved on the back end, and obviously on Angular side there's services as well, but and various other things. Have a look, see what you think.
Yeah, and you can also use the website to contact us, either share a story, give us feedback, or say that you want to be a guest on the show, because it's always fun. So if you have anything to talk about, something interesting, please send us a message and join us up here. It's gonna be tremendous.
Yeah, and keep an eye out on our Twitter for announcements for next week's show. We haven't got a guest planned at the moment, as far as I'm aware, but I said Josie has been ill most of this week, so we haven't spoken to that much about what's coming up. I'm sure there'll be something there. So yes, thank you very much. See you next week at 7 o'clock on Twitter, and hopefully Josie will be back, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, and cracking the whip as normal.
Yeah, hopefully she's gonna be better. So yeah, bye-bye everyone.
It's a goodbye from us all.
Bye-bye.
See you later. Bye.
Bye-bye.